Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Town of East Gwillimbury's Committee of the Whole Council meeting. And at this time, I will call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Please note that Mayor Haxon is absent with notice, and in her absence and in my capacity as acting mayor, I will be chairing today's meeting. So start off with any declarations of interest. Seeing none, the land acknowledgement. The Town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the first peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I want to thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as EG's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. With that, I will now go to community announcements. I have one just off the top. I would love to remind the public that our New Year's Eve celebrations on Sunday, December 31st will be held at the Sports Complex, and that begins at 10 a.m. So love to have the community come out and support that. It's always a great time. Do we have any other members of committee that would like to say a few words? Seeing none, we will move to deputations. The first deputation, our first deputation is Mr. Kevin Desforges on behalf of the LARKIN land use planners, making a deputation to committee regarding item G4, that's on our development services planning branch report. So Mr. Desforges, if you would like to come up. I've been told that you've been communicated that you have 5 minutes. Is that true?
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of council. My name is Kevin Desforges, and I represent the landowners of 1906 Leslie Street, the corner of Leslie Street, which is just adjacent to your property on the other side, Mount Albert and Leslie Street. Through you, Mr. Chair, we have been at council this summer. We received feedback from our site plan application number 1810 that commenced approximately 5 years ago. And we have brought all those items that were discussed, suggestions, recommendations through council and through planning and through other members of the planning departments and the region. And we have made all those in preparation to come back to council to represent our I guess, more of a smaller kind of version of what we've done to make this a lot more feasible, I think, and hopefully in the eyes of council and the Town of East Gwillimbury, that this is a good plan that will resonate well and be useful to the needs of what's required in the Town of East Gwillimbury. So we've enhanced it to the central place for community. It's right beside our Level City Civic Center. We've done numerous things for sustainability in our property, and we're trying to make it a lot more dynamic in the way where it would be received through the heritage corridor as a heritage look or heritage feel, and to bring that about. If I may, please. Thank you. So the overview of the lands, it's approximately just over 10, just below 10 acres. It's on the southwest corner, and it's in the Heritage District corridor. Today, I'm coming to council to please ask for the outcome of site plan approval, allocation approval for residential and the commercial portion of it, and the severance approval. We have also changed one item, if we can go to the next item there, that through our retail and commercial at the corner, this is an item that was a little bit of a, I guess, a sticking point to a certain degree, that it had residential and retail, but unfortunately it didn't have appropriate allocation for many years. And so we, as an ownership, thought maybe what the best thing to do is, what could we do with this property? How could we be good, responsible people from Town of East Gwillimbury? And what can we do to make this a viable experience? And our opportunity to present in front of council is to convey the land, which is 2.54 acres, on the corner of Judah Doan and Leslie Street, immediately adjacent to the property here, and to convey that to the town, for which they may do whatever reason that they could use it for. I'm sure there's lots of uses that the town may use, and primarily, right now, could be at least a park. It could be whatever you would like to choose to use. We have also done on there many sustainability items, like we say. We've done site traffic management, we've done stormwater management, we've done passive solar orientation, we've done all the solar readiness throughout it, and we've added all the EV parking underground, and I think we're using quite a bit less allocation into our site than a normal, typical dwelling that you have here. And on top of that, through our residential, we have created much smaller, more economic by putting them together, by doing some stacking, and by creating a much more affordable, much more sustainable, and a much more diverse group of first-time home buyers, maybe retiring home buyers with smaller capacity, smaller needs, smaller allocation needs, but bringing in, instead of regular townhouses and the typical family homes. Next, please. I think we've already discussed most of that, but the property is close to the EG radial line trail. We've agreed with Stephanie Fraser from Landscaping and Parks to bring the trail all the way back up to the EG, the radial line trail. We've made bike paths. We've created hopefully the right atmosphere to make this a community center and to continue bringing people to that neighborhood. Next, please. We've also changed the retail on all our properties. We've created that outdoor park, letting the old-fashioned brick with the sight lines to create that downtown look and feel, like a downtown Collingwood, downtown Meaford sort of look that would really, I think, go well with the Heritage Corridor. So we've done that to all the retail for that slide, the next slide also, and also for the commercial office space that we have on that location. Next slide, please. We've done the same also for the residential. We've added the stone, we've added some roof terraces, we've added solar, we've got wood panel aesthetics, we've got the proper balconies and the same look that would match within that area. Next, please. That's just a cross section. With all underground parking, there's no, the underground parking remains just underneath where the buildings are. We've got permeable paving, all those items. Next, please. And then, so if we're looking at the application for severance, so what we're saying is basically parcel 1 would be the commercial residential section. Parcel 2 would be the more affordable residential and apartments, smaller units. And parcel 3 is the parcel that we would like to convey to the town of East Gwillimbury. Next one, please. Sorry, those are just for your indication. Those are the different sort of aesthetics that we've come with, and they'll all be included as same as they were before. And next one, please. And that was it. Sorry, I apologize.
Just fine, thank you. Is there any questions from the members of committee? Looks like we're seeing none, and I guess we'll be saving questions for the staff later on, so thank you very much for coming. So looking for a motion to receive. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Wonderful. Takes us to presentations. Next, we have a very special presentation acknowledging James Wong for his years of service and contribution to the town. We just had a little gathering just before this meeting. So James will be retiring at the end of this year after 26 years of service with the town. So I'd love to pass it over to our CAO to tell us a bit about James and fill us in on his accomplishments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It really is a pleasure to acknowledge James Wong today, one of our building officials for over a quarter century of dedicated service to the town. It's interesting because in chatting with James earlier today, I became aware that James was hired on by one of our former chief building officials, and at the time James was hired on with the town, he was the only building official, building inspector with the town, but he actually wore two hats at that point. He was also our bylaw enforcement officer. So he was out issuing tickets and inspecting and doing anything else that was assigned, other duties as assigned 26 years ago. So James has also not only seen the town grow incredibly in the last 26 years, but he's actually got his fingerprints on a lot of that because he was personally involved in the work that was done to develop the Yonge and Green Lane commercial district that we have. He also has been involved in our two very significant builds at the town, our operations center and our ongoing work that's being done at our Health and Active Living Plaza. In fact, although James is getting ready for retirement and talking to GM Karmazin about a half an hour ago, he said he just received an update from James. So James is working right down to the wire, right through to retirement date. He'll be inspecting and issuing reports and information, and that's just the type of dedication that he brings to the town. So I certainly am just delighted to be able to acknowledge James and wish him all the very best in his retirement.
Great. Thank you, Mr. CAO. And on behalf of the town and council, we thank you sincerely. As I was saying earlier, we usually bring greetings on behalf of the town, and the opportunity to bring with thanks on behalf of our residents in this town. You personify the excellence that is the Town of East Gwillimbury staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. For everything.
Thank you for everything. So looking for a mover to receive. Councillor Leahy, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving through the agenda, that takes us to Development Services, and Councillor Roy-DiClemente, you are in the chair. I'll pass the gavel to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a relatively busy afternoon. The first item is a Development Services presentation regarding our property standards bylaw. Ms. Bégin, did you want to introduce that?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask our Manager of Bylaws, Jennifer Nichols, to provide the presentation, which is in response to Council's request to sort of understand the property standards bylaw and what we might want to consider in terms of future evolutions of that bylaw.
Thank you. And before Ms. Nichols starts, can I have a motion to receive, please? Moved by Councillor Foster.
Good afternoon, Acting Mayor, Council, staff, and individuals watching today. This afternoon, I will be providing a review of our property standards bylaw, including the tools staff currently have to address property standards and some further options for Council's consideration to address vacant buildings. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, just bear with us for a moment. It appears that the slide is frozen. Just one moment, please.
Looked like it was in edit mode. Maybe there's a virtual way of eliminating those weeds.
I think we have it running.
Thanks. What is property standards bylaw? It is a bylaw passed under the authority of Section 15 of the Building Code Act and provides a minimum maintenance standards for property. Under this legislation, an officer can inspect, issue orders, re-inspect, and upon noncompliance, can issue fines and/or remedial work can be performed to bring the property into compliance. Under our fees and charges bylaw, there is the ability to apply fees, including inspection fee, file management fee when an order has been issued, and should remedial works be required in addition to the owner being invoiced the cost of the remedial work, there's also an additional 25% administration fee that is imposed. The administration fee and all cost incurred is added to taxes if it's not paid. Next slide. With all our bylaw enforcement files, officers work with the property owner with a primary goal to obtain compliance. These pictures represent a before and after picture of our enforcement efforts. In this case, staff worked with the property owner who eventually brought their property into compliance. I will note that all pictures contained within this presentation are from properties within East Gwillimbury. Our bylaw staff do a great job ensuring that our community is safe and properties are well maintained. Next slide. So when compliance cannot be achieved, the officer has the ability to either proceed by way of charges or request that remedial work be completed. The owner is invoiced the cost of the remedial work plus an additional 25% admin fee and added to taxes if the invoice is not paid. This option is what is generally applied in most circumstances, as it is a much more effective tool for staff and results in the property being cleaned up in a timely manner. The alternative, which is charging the owner, does not necessarily mean that the property will be brought into compliance and appears to the community that staff are not doing anything to resolve the matter. Next slide. The property standards bylaw consists of several provisions, including requiring an owner to keep their property clean and free of brush, waste material, unlicensed vehicles, dismantled boats, trailers, machinery, and other debris that creates an unsafe condition or which is not in keeping with the neighboring properties. Next slide. The bylaw requires that every owner shall cut the grass and weeds whenever the growth exceeds 20 centimeters in height. Next slide. The bylaw also provides for exterior standards, which provide that exterior walls, balconies, floors, and windows shall be maintained in good repair, free of defective, cracked, or broken objects, requiring buildings to be free from peeling paint, eaves-troughs, roof, gutters, fascia, soffit, including all exterior metal construction components, are properly secured and in good repair. Roofs also should be maintained in a watertight condition and free from loose, rotten, curling, or lifting. Next slide. The bylaw also has provisions specific to occupancy standards. These complaints are generally made by tenants and address conditions within the dwelling, including maintenance of all plumbing, heating, requiring an indoor temperature of 22 degrees throughout the dwelling unit, ventilation, electrical, lighting, requiring that all fixture switches are maintained in a safe working order, and interior finish of the building, including peeling paint and other defects. Next slide. Within the bylaw, unoccupied buildings are deemed vacant after 90 days. The owner is required to protect the unoccupied building against the risk of fire, storm neglect, intentional damage, accident, including unauthorized entry. This is generally done by boarding up the property. Should this minimum standard fail more than once to exclude unauthorized entry, and where the owner lacks control of tenants or security measures to protect the property, the officer has the ability to require more secure options, including fencing to secure the property. The owner also has the requirement to disconnect utilities. The bylaw also has specific provisions for heritage properties and heritage attributes, which state owners of heritage property shall maintain, preserve, and protect heritage attributes and the visual structural heritage integrity of the property. Next slide. Our current tools provide the ability to issue an order to comply requiring that the building be brought into compliance with the bylaw, or the property shall be cleared of all building structures, waste material, and left in a graded level condition. Should the order not be complied with, the town can cause the property to be repaired or demolished with cost added to taxes. Next slide. Some proposed amendments. Next slide. A municipal comparison and review were conducted of our property standards bylaw, which revealed that our current enforcement practice for responding to property standards concerns aligns with our municipal counterparts. Staff are recommending the proposed provision, providing that where a building or fence or any part of the property or that has been demolished, that the site be cleared within 30 days. Next slide. So this is an option for council's consideration, is including implementing a vacant building registration bylaw. As we know, in most circumstances, vacant and derelict buildings can negatively impact neighborhoods and individuals by becoming dilapidated, causing a hazard, becoming unsightly, and attracting trespassers. Staff have reviewed what other municipalities have in place, which include vacant building registries, as well as some have implemented a vacant building registration bylaw in an effort to reduce the number of vacant buildings and increase accountability for owners of vacant buildings, prevent neglect, and encourage the redevelopment and repurposing of existing vacant properties. Some provisions include requiring owners to register their vacant building after 90 consecutive days of being vacant and include a yearly fee. Next slide. The proposed bylaw outlines additional obligations to the owner, which include attending the property at least every 14 days to identify and remediate any violations, posting a contact list on the building, and maintain liability insurance with no less than $2 million. Next slide. Different municipalities take different approaches in an attempt to reduce the number of vacant and derelict buildings. At a minimum, municipalities utilize their respective property standards bylaw and require vacant buildings to be in a safe condition. Some have opted to register vacant derelict buildings through a vacant building registration bylaw. Although there are a few York Region municipalities that have implemented this, staff were able to find some in Ontario, municipalities that currently have this framework in place and include annual fees, with one charging an annual fee as high as $1,450 yearly to owners that keep vacant buildings. Vacant buildings do take up a lot of bylaw enforcement resources, in addition to fire resources as they respond to fire calls. Fire prevention does have a recent list of vacant buildings in town, and estimate 47 vacant buildings are currently in East Gwillimbury. Next slide. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Members of committee, any questions? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation. I think it was in some ways spurred on because Councillor Foster and I were asking about the abandoned buildings in the middle of Holland Landing at the gas station. So I'm happy to see this. I like the idea of a vacant building fee, bringing in a bylaw around that. And I wrote in my notes before you said it about the administrative cost of us having to look after going out there every time there's a complaint. Hadn't really thought about fire, but that's another one. My big concern with the abandoned gas station right now is the fence around it. But having talked with Ms. Nichols, it doesn't sound like there's a lot we can do about that. Construction fencing is keeping the building secure. It's not a nice look for our downtown. But hopefully with a vacant building bylaw, we might be able to spur them on to do something about it. And my concern is if we have 47 buildings vacant now, this problem's going to grow. If we don't have allocation to build, and we know a lot of land is owned by developers waiting for that allocation, I think we're going to just see more and more of this. And I mean, it's not lost on any of us that we're in a housing crisis, and especially when it comes to rentals. And a lot of these buildings could be rented. There's just not the financial incentive for the people who own them to rent them out. And I think the bylaw like this would give them that incentive. So I'm very much in favor of asking staff to bring back a bylaw that looks like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I agree that the vacant registration might be a way to have some of these buildings that are sitting empty. I mean, we're a province that's supposed to be in a housing crisis, and we drive around and see vacant homes that maybe people could be living in. I know that's difficult because developers don't want to be landlords and all the rest of that, but so when we go back to the property standards part of it, do you find that most property owners need a gentle reminder? And I guess to go along with that, how often do we have to go in and do the remedial work and charge it back on taxes? Is that something that we often do?
Go ahead.
Through Madam Chair. For vacant ones, yeah, oftentimes we find they're absentee landlords and are often the buildings left vacant. And some of these are actually in our newer developments. And we get those complaints of the long grass and weeds. And we do, in some occasions, have to go out 2-3 times a year, like through the season, to go and actually do remedial work on these properties. I would say, generally, like I said earlier, we try to get compliance with the property owner. Resorting to the remedial is kind of our last resort of cleaning it up. So I would say 10% of our files would require remedial work for further enforcement.
Anyone else? Any questions? Councillor Crone, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Ms. Nichols for the presentation. I am so glad to see this. This is a lot of great stuff that you brought forward, and you know, Councillor Carruthers talked about the gas station, the old gas station in Holland Landing. That was top of mind with me as well. I know we've got other property that have vacant homes on it that developers have bought up, and the homes are sitting there. It's a shame, you know, they could be rented. So I think let's look for ways that we can, you know, generate some revenue where we can that don't affect the taxpayer. Because if we don't do that, all these, you know, if we don't reclaim some of the administrative costs, it's going to wind up on the taxpayers' backs. They're going to be subsidizing the bad behavior of other landowners. So I think this is the right direction to be going. But I have a question about the insurance aspect. I think it's a great idea to ask for them, for the vacant dwellings to have insurance. I think it's going to be tough. There's not a lot of insurance companies that like to dabble in that space, so I think it's going to really make them face some tough decisions. Will you be, my question is more how you would plan to handle that. Are you going to ask for them to provide proof of insurance? Will you check up on that every year? What's your thought process around that?
Through Madam Chair. So these are just some ideas that I've come across while doing research on what others have in place, and one of those is the insurance component. It would be a licensing regime in that they would need to be licensed every year. There's a fee attached, similar to our current licensing of our business licensing. We require proof of insurance as part of that licensing process.
Thank you. Councillor Crone stole one of my questions, as usual. Anyone else have any questions? I had one quick one for you, Ms. Nichols. I realize that we're trying to address some of those developer-owned or investor-owned properties. What about our residents who are snowbirds, who travel extensively, and who might be leaving their property for more than 90 days, but who are, you know, responsible property owners and make sure that someone is checking on the property and the lawn is getting mowed? Do we have a thought for that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Typically, we're not aware of every single vacant building in the town. Typically, we're made aware of that when we get the complaint of the long grass and weeds or the properties not being maintained. I haven't thought specifically of that exact 90 days component, sure. But obviously, you know, we work with property owners, right? If they're maintaining their property, we can add some kind of provision within that bylaw that states that effect.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So at this point, we have a resolution, if there are, oh, Councillor Crothers, I see your hand, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, just to that point, I would think that they're still living there. Their effects are still within the house, so I would think that wouldn't apply. It wouldn't be a vacant house. It would just be someone who's on extended holiday. But I did want to add another resolution, and perhaps that was what you were getting to, Councillor Roy-DiClemente, about staff bringing back a draft vacant building bylaw to council for consideration.
That's where I was headed.
Happy to move that. Okay.
Thank you. So Councillor Foster, it was your motion that we receive. Are you amenable to adding a clause that we direct staff to prepare a draft vacant building registration bylaw and bring it to us for consideration? You have that, Madam Clerk? At least the intent? All right. Moved by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. I imagine you're staying at the podium because of the next item. Okay, so the next item is a report regarding our regulatory bylaw amendments, and you're bringing us a report. Ms. Bégin, did you want to set the stage for Ms. Nichols?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. Just, these are a couple of amendments that were uncovered as part of the review process when looking to enact the administrative penalty system. And so, and there may be more coming forward as we continue this housekeeping exercise, but I'll now defer to our manager of bylaws to speak to these two specific ones.
Okay, so before Ms. Nichols does so, can I have a motion to address the resolutions before us? Moved by Councillor Johns. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Nichols.
Through Madam Chair. So this report in front of you today is a housekeeping exercise where a review was done of our regulatory bylaws. And it was observed that there's two that were requiring a little bit of an update. One being the property standards bylaw, which I went over in the presentation, just that one provision requiring that once the building's been demolished, that everything needs to be cleaned up from the property within 30 days. The other piece to that amendment is just a housekeeping exercise. Our fees and charges bylaw currently provides for a fee for individuals that want to appeal our orders under that property standards bylaw. So it's currently a practice that we have in place now. Putting in the bylaw just, again, just that housekeeping exercise.
Allows everything to match.
Correct, yes. The other one was the encumbrance of highway bylaw. It's quite an older bylaw. We actually found last year, we've had a few complaints of folks pushing snow onto the sidewalk after the sidewalk plow had gone by. And review of all the bylaws, I couldn't find anything to address that. So hence, we've now, in front of you today for consideration is that amendment, so we can address that going forward, hopefully for this year. The other were of some residents what they're doing is they're building patio or retaining walls and items, gardens, so forth, right beside the sidewalk. And we currently don't have any setbacks within our bylaw to kind of regulate that. So this is just a mechanism for us to handle, to effectively enforce those issues that come up. Specifically, again, the sidewalk plows have difficulty when there's things right up against the sidewalk and liability for the town for damage.
Thank you. Members of committee, any questions for Ms. Nichols? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Johns that we approve as presented. All those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. And our next item is our backyard hens. Ms. Bégin. Oh, before we do that, may I have a motion, please? Moved by Councillor Leahy. Thank you. Ms. Bégin, do you want to introduce this next item, please?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. This was an extensive piece of work undertaken by the bylaws team with support of communications. It was sparked by a deputation made by a resident seeking to have backyard hens in a space that was smaller than what was typically permitted. So we undertook a survey to get feedback in terms of how much interest there was, and so the recommendations that you have before you speak to the strong interest that was displayed by the public, but balancing that with the fact that should this pilot project be approved and go forward, it does represent a service level increase for the municipality in terms of taking on the responsibility for education and monitoring of this program. So we've through the research that Ms. Nichols has undertaken in terms of similar programs, arrived at a recommended fee. The other part of that fee, part of that is to recover some of the costs associated with delivering the program, but the other part is to ensure that when if residents are interested in pursuing this, that they approach it with the appropriate level of care and seriousness in terms of it's not a simple undertaking to care for these animals, and it does require a fairly significant commitment. So I'll let Ms. Nichols speak to the content of the report in general, but and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Nichols.
Through Madam Chair. Madam Beijing kind of gave a good overview of the report. What is recommended in front of you is a 24-month pilot project commencing March 1st, which would allow us to see what the uptake of the program will be, and any kind of enforcement and staff resources that the program is, would provide, and then report back to council on recommendations and how it is. I did speak with our border municipalities. Both Newmarket and Georgina currently have a similar project in place, and they've had minimal uptake. They don't have a lot of licenses that come in yearly. Newmarket, for instance, has 1 or 2 maybe a year, just due to they are a lot of work and costly, and there's lots to think about before obviously taking on that responsibility. So I don't anticipate, and they both of them didn't anticipate an increase of enforcement or complaints as a result of the project either. So in front of you today, council is kind of, I provided some options within the report. If that's something that you really don't want to entertain, that's fine. That's fine too, but I just thought, just with the kind of the survey results of kind of what residents were kind of wanting, I thought I would propose that, and the floor is yours. What you'd like to do, council?
Thank you. I have a question from Councillor Leahy. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Nichols. My question is with regard to the criteria and the obligations and responsibilities of the property owners if they choose to have backyard hens. And it's with regard to the criteria that states that a site plan is required and must be submitted to the town. What can you explain a little bit further what's involved with a resident getting a site plan, or what the criteria specifically for a site plan would be? Would a hand-drawn sketch be sufficient, or what would bylaws be looking for?
Through Madam Chair. Yeah, a hand-drawn site plan would suffice. Basically, what we would be looking at is to ensure that those those setbacks are met within the bylaw. And part of that licensing regime would be that initial inspection by staff to ensure that the coop is in fact where they, the residents say it is, and all the setbacks are met and the requirements of the bylaw are met.
So similar to what we would do for our fire permits.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I was really sitting on the fence on this one. There's so many downsides that I worry about with this, and increase in mice, avian flu spreading to some of our local farms. There's a lot of fire hazards with these coops. People put heaters inside, and there's straw on the ground, and it's a wooden building. But then on the other side, I'm hearing there's so many benefits as far as keeping bugs down, the manure piece, eggs, all that sort of thing. To me, the most important thing that we can do as a town is to provide education and to ensure that people are doing this in a safe way. So I would definitely be in favor that we do something on backyard hens. I don't think it's something that we should ban, but I would like us to concentrate on the education and compliance pieces. And in order to do that, I worry that the $100 fee might actually make some people not let us know that they have backyard hens, and it's a missed opportunity. We can't go and inspect what they're doing. We can't give them the educational component of it. Given that there's only going to be a few a year, I think it's in the town's best interest to get as many people registered as possible, so we can make sure that they're safe, that they're not a fire hazard, and that everyone has the education they need to raise the birds. So I would like us to consider, especially for the first year of the pilot, to waive the registration fee and see if we can get as many people to, sort of come out of the woodwork, so to speak, make sure we know where they all are. And after a year, staff can report back and let us know if this is something we need to continue, if it's cost prohibitive to continue to do this without a fee. But I think it's going to be the best way to capture as many people as possible and get a really good handle on where these are.
Ms. Bégin, you had a comment to make. Please go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I guess just with respect to the fee, I think because this does constitute a service level increase and will require additional staff resources, I think I understand the concerns about maybe missing people who may not wish to proactively register, but I think that similar to other property standards complaints, there are ways that the bylaws would learn about them. I also wanted to note that we do have the ability, if this registration fee presents an economic barrier, then we have the ability to consider that and adapt accordingly, so that people are not excluded from being part of this program due to financial circumstances.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. If the $100 fee is an economic barrier, then they don't have money for the proper feed, for the proper bedding, for the vet when their birds get sick. So I'm not worried about an economic barrier preventing people from paying the $100 fee. I'm worried more about people just saying, oh, I don't want to bother. For $100, I'm just going to do this myself, save myself $100. So I don't think it's that they don't have the money. I think it's more of a choice of not wanting to spend it on something that they're already doing. I think that it's, given that Newmarket only gets a few a year, the cost to the town is so minimal, and it is in our best interest to know where these places are. And I think there's going to be unintended consequences if we charge a fee and people don't register, and then we have to go back out there and charge a fine, et cetera. I think it's going to end up costing the town more. So I don't think the $100 fee is going to come close to recouping all the admin around it. Both Mississauga and Toronto canceled their programs because administratively it was too expensive. So I would rather know where they are and skip the $100.
Councillor Leahy.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. With regard to the administration fee, in my opinion, because we've been raising taxes and we need to start really looking for more ways of increasing revenue to meet administrative costs. Whenever we're increasing our service levels, I believe that should be in tandem with an increase in an administration fee to be fiscally responsible. And from the feedback that I've had in the community, I believe that the residents who are keen to take up this program will be prepared to pay a licensing fee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation, and I'm so glad that we were able to do something with this. I know members of the public have been asking for it. Between this and the other amendments we heard earlier in the agenda, I can see our bylaws officers being a little more busy than they have been. Not that they haven't been, but this will add to the workload. So service level increase is definitely noted. I certainly don't have an issue if we wanted to do an introductory discount on the fee. I think long term, I think the fee is the fee, and we have to live with that. But the success of this will boil down to, I think, education, so everyone knows what to do, and what I like to call good neighborliness. So I think neighbors being respectful of each other, I think that will really be the success. I think Newmarket has about 12 that they have in operation. They're twice the size of us. So I'm not sure how many we'll have long term. I think people will find out that what farmers know is that this is work, and it's you can't just take off for a holiday and leave your chickens unattended. You have to have. I don't think there's a chicken daycare service available. I certainly wouldn't recommend KFC, but there's work to it. So anyway, I'm supportive of this, and I'm glad to see it moving forward. Thank you very much.
So Councillor Crone, do we need to get you in touch with Brennan in economic development to get your business plan for chicken daycare in place?
I love it. We'll call it 11 herbs and seasoning.
Oh boy. Okay, any further discussion on the matter? Councillor Leahy, you have made the motion as presented. In my mind, I wanted to move ahead and just pass it, but I think it's wise that we make it a pilot project for a 2-year period, and we learn what we need to learn from this and make adjustments before we make it official and final for everyone. Obviously, I think it'll be something that we'll need to address if we decide to discontinue the program and people have chickens, and we'll need to support that or have some way of addressing that. But I think in the short term, again, it's the right thing to do. Ironically, this was a campaign issue in 2010 in our town, so it's interesting for me to see it come full circle today. So thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful comments on the matter. So Councillor Leahy, it's your motion. I'm going to call the vote now. All those in favor as presented? Opposed? And that matter is carried. Thank you. You've had a busy afternoon, Ms. Nichols. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda, I believe it's the last one on our prepared agenda, is Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2023-57, an application for site plan approval at 19086 Leslie Street. This was the matter of the deputation that we received earlier this afternoon. We have a motion, I'm looking for a motion that we receive the report, that we endorse the site plan application and authorize the mayor and municipal clerk to enter into the site plan agreement. May I have a motion to that effect? Moved by Councillor Johns, thank you. Ms. Bégin, do you want to go ahead and present this report, please?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to ask or invite our Manager of Planning, Victoria Moore, to walk us through this report, as she's been the planner on this file. As we heard from the earlier deputation and previous presentations, I believe Council is familiar with this site plan, but the new information is the request for allocation and the offer to convey a portion of the lands to the municipality.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Ms. Moore.
Through you, Madam Chair. This is a site plan application before Council today, asking for endorsement in principle and delegation of final approval to staff. And what that would do is allow us to work with the applicant on some of the remaining technical matters that still need to be addressed, and issue approval at a staff level once those matters, as well as servicing allocation, have been granted. So it's essentially a mixed-use development application for 240 residential units, as well as about 3,500 square meters in commercial retail space. And the biggest change to the plan since this was last before council is the proposed southeast block of the plan is proposed to be conveyed to the town, and this is above and beyond the parkland requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Members of committee, any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think my first question, and then kind of go from there, but my first question is, I think it's for Ms. Bengin or Ms. Moore, but do we, when I noticed the applicant, when they're doing the deputation and talked about heritage feel or the look of what the village, to mix with the village core, but do we as a municipality, do we have design guidelines to fit? So the elements that have been brought forward in this application, were they following design guidelines to meet a historical feel? Like, where does that come from?
Go ahead, Ms. Bishop.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we do have design guidelines that reflect sort of the heritage characteristics. It is subjective, but recognizing that this development will likely be at the sort of the entry point coming south of what may be the Heritage Conservation District. So the applicant, we've had a number of conversations about sort of features and exterior finishes that would be consistent with that look and feel.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, please. I got you.
I have a question about why this is before us now when we are going to be looking at our allocation reserve in January. And it seems like that would be the best time to be taking a look at another development is when we have a better handle on what our reserve actually is. So that's my first question, and a couple more after that. So if I get an answer on that.
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the timing is at the request of the applicant. For business reasons, is seeking a decision to be able to move forward with the development. I acknowledge that we still have not finalized the policy vis-a-vis the reserve while it's being reviewed by legal. I would suggest that we're reasonably comfortable that that at a minimum, the reserve would be 750 units, of which 109 were already allocated to another project. So that may be helpful for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you. Now, the applicant said that there was an issue with allocation, and that's why they're conveying the land, which kind of struck me as a little bit odd. That I hope that that's not the game that we're in is what are you going to give us in exchange for allocation? We need to be approving the best projects. I think we need to think carefully about that. Because if allocation is up for sale by how much land you want to give us, then I'm sure there'd be others who would want to speak up on that as well. I'm not really big on moving our process forward faster because the applicant has a year-end deadline. I think it's up to us to follow our process, and if we're going to get an update on our allocation reserve in January, that seems to me like a really good time to look at this. It is a good project. I did have a question last time it came before us about the accessibility of those upper floor townhouses. So I do have a little star on that, but there's a lot of other boxes that this checks. I just don't want to rush into it because of someone else's priorities. I think we need to stick with our priorities, which is getting a handle on our allocation policy. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Foster, I think you had a question?
Just a comment, thank you. Just a comment more than anything, and hopefully, Ms. Bégin, you can maybe speak to this. A couple of things that kind of jumped out at me reading the report. I didn't notice anything about a shadow study, and I'm not sure the buildings on the west side and the homes on Beachboro, if that is something that you're keeping an eye on. And I also noticed kind of a lack of parking information. There was no, you know, the typical 1.5 spots per unit or however that worked out. I want to make sure that that's at the top of mind.
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, both of those issues are part of the ongoing technical review, and it's our belief that what's being proposed in terms of the stacked towns at what would be the rear or facing Beachboro represents an appropriate transition in terms of height, and the parking has been, I think it actually exceeds, if Victoria can, Ms. Moore can add more technical detail, but we certainly have been reviewing that as the technical review has progressed. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Johns. And then
Thanks.
I see your hand, Councillor Cronje, you're next. Go ahead, Councillor Johns.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to reflect on this as with him being within the ward. I am very excited about the opportunity to have something like this development come forward within the town. I think for years we've been looking at that empty field and wondering what is going to happen. And I recognize that it's economics and market driven and getting the right players together from a commercial side and residential. And I think that we just heard dialogue about the fact that we are in this housing crisis. And I think for years we are used to seeing fields of homes that all look the same and all cost the same price. And when I look to this development, I see housing that is attainable. I see that the housing is not located in the middle of nowhere, but it's along Leslie Street, along transit lines for ability for people to move. The fact is that it's going to be connecting into a trail system. I think not only the fact that from an attainable housing perspective, Councillor Foster called out the shadow study. What excited me was the clarity in knowing what we were getting from this application. The fact is that I think residents for years within the community on Beachboro have, quite frankly, have been concerned about what's going to be going in there. And I think that the opportunity to have a transition into commercial onto Leslie Street and having that type of transition being that type of housing, it should be very exciting. And I just think that for so long within the community of Sharon, we have had excellent retailers, one excellent retailer in Plaza, but the fact is that Canada's fastest growing municipality, we need a diversity in commercial opportunities. And I think that having that commercial spot on the east side, and then on the north side that would essentially help support the residents of Rivera that are soon to be occupied. And quite frankly, the crosswalk that my counterpart in the ward, Councillor Roy-DiClemente, has been fighting so hard for to ensure that crosswalk goes in. I just see this, I see this coming to life in front of me, and the fact is that you always have to deal with certainty where you can get it, and when something is in front of you, I think that is an incumbent upon us as council to give every opportunity to the marketplace to allow for that certainty to come to fruition, because we don't know what the future holds. What we know is what's before us, and what is before us is a plan that not only delivers on the community from a commercial aspect and a diversification of taxes, but attainable housing that we have been wanting and hoping for within this housing crisis. And the fact is that on top of that, there's a conveyance of land that is directly adjacent to our current lands. And I think that outside of that, I'm just a big fan of what this property could be, and so I'll be supporting this. I'd like to go even as far as exploring allowing commercial allocation, and then exploring residential. Ms. Bégin, our general manager, has said that we have 750 units of residential allocation available, and I know that we're going to be going through that that review of allocation, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be prioritizing a development such as this that we've wanted in this town for so long. Given the fact that we're going through an allocation study doesn't mean that we can't prioritize this residential development and get moving on the commercial. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. Councillor Crone, I saw your hand. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Madam Chair. Could someone on staff remind me, how long has this proposal been in front of us? It seems to me it goes back to my first term on council. Am I wrong? And has it always been the same? The applicant remained the same, or has this property flipped hands? Can someone answer that for me?
Ms. Bégin or Ms. Moore, do we know how old this, I know it's been around a while, because I remember the previous iteration and the dueling retirement homes. And I still bear the scars from the residents on Beachboro who were pretty upset about a high-rise retirement home right directly across the street from them. So, Ms. Moore, can you tell us how long we've had this file open?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The site plan was first submitted in 2018. Before that, there was a zoning bylaw amendment that was addressed through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. So that came in, I believe, in 2017 and was resolved in 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're really spanning 3 terms of council then with this. Okay, and I know there's been talk of the tenants that they're going to have here, and I don't know if it's been, there's, at one point it was rumored the Shoppers Drug Mart and Starbucks. Has there been any, or maybe I might be wrong about the coffee shop. Anyway, can anyone, confirm that they have tenants signed, or is this all just conjecture at this point?
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe staff are in the position to be able to confirm tenancy, but it is been part of our ongoing conversation. And through the municipality, we've been approached by businesses looking to locate there. So I can confirm that the interest is valid, whether or not there are agreements in place.
Okay. And through you, Madam Chair, the comments were made about attainable housing, which I think we all welcome. But, one person's attainable housing definition might be different than the others. What can we do is there any way we can wrap our arms around that to quantify what the applicant means by attainable housing? Can we give some definition to that?
Ms. Bégin? I think that's why we're not calling it affordable, is we're using a different language.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The concept of attainability is a bit of a moving target, and I don't believe has been formally defined by the province or anyone. Affordable housing typically in the past has always referred to assisted housing, so where there is some element of subsidization for the housing. Attainability in terms of the context of planning and community development is intended to the definition we're working with are providing other options that if we look at what the price point of the average single detached dwelling is, are there other options that are at a lower price point that offer the potential for a rental income, accessory dwellings, those types of things that make it more achievable for somebody entering the housing market to be able to attain or to be able to have that as a place to live. So I think the fact that it differs from single-family dwelling and those price points would in this case make it more attainable, but there is no sort of set criteria.
Perhaps another way of looking at it would be simply that it's, just a moment, Councillor Crone, another way of looking at it would be that it's just a diversified product that's different than what's already available in the marketplace. Go ahead, Councillor Crone.
Yeah, sorry, I'll wrap up. Just 2 more questions here. In Councillor Roy-DiClemente, you mentioned about bearing the scars of an earlier iteration of this. Have we received any feedback from the neighboring community about the proposal, pro or anti?
Ms. Bégin?
Through you, Madam Chair, not recently, there was a request from the rest of the Sharon landowners group for this development to be part of that agreement, and that's moving forward. But to my knowledge, we don't have haven't had any other concerns expressed recently.
Councillor Crone, I can suggest as one of the ward councillors, what's happening on that corner question ranks in the top 5 of the questions that I receive from residents.
Yeah, I bet. And it would be nice to get that corner cleaned up and looking shipshape. My last comment is I want us to be rock solid in the allocation. We have so little of it left. We want to treat it like unicorns. Where I just want further assurances that we're safe with providing an allocation to this. I would hate for us to get into a bit of a jackpot where we can't live up to our promises. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crone.
Madam Chair.
I do want to circle back to the question about the tenants, and perhaps we were neglecting our deputant when he was at the microphone, and that we probably should have directed it to him. We do have him still here. If we wanted to ask him that question, we would have to have a resolution to waive the procedural bylaw and recognize another speaker. Is there any appetite for that? Councillor Leahy, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, we've got a motion on the table to allow for the applicant's representative to address us further. Mr. Desforges, I don't need a vote? I need a vote. Okay, so all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we can recognize Mr. Desforges and ask you if you are in a position to share any confirmed tenants that you have with us.
Through you, Madam Chair. There is a great interest. However, until we have received any approval, it's been a very difficult chore to get anybody to sign on a dotted line. So though we have many interest from pharmacies, doctors' clinics, cafes, I think there was a wing place, pizza place, dry cleaner, et cetera, many tenants, one for an office on the second floor, in a business that is a new market that would like to relocate to East Gwillimbury because the owner of the business is from East Gwillimbury. So they're all ready, and we have quite a few proposals, we'll say, and letters of intent. But until we can finalize with them and give them proper dates, unfortunately, none of them will sign on the dotted line.
Thank you.
So,
one further question for you.
yes, Madam Chair.
What's your timeline? So if we approve your site plan application and we can confirm that you have allocation both on the commercial and the residential side, when could you have shovels in the ground?
I believe we would probably be in the ground by May 30th,
2024?
2024.
Okay,
Sorry, I
just checking.
apologize to clarify.
We're
Yes.
used to
Yes.
dealing with the long
Correct.
tail.
I do believe we would just have to touch up our building permit plans, submit our building permit application, and I would think that would be hopefully a 90 to 100-day process and another 6 weeks to finish them off. So I think we should be able to have that, and that gives us proper amount of time to finalize the leases, finalize the go-ahead, and then, of course, we would start building everything in a phased way,
Thank you.
especially starting with commercial and going into residential, finishing that way.
Okay. Members of committee, any further questions for Mr. Desforges while we have him and we've bent the rules a little bit?
If I make one comment, we
Yes.
did do a shadow study, and that is completed, and we can turn it on and turn it off. I've made a whole bunch of things, so sometimes I don't always put it back on, but that shadow study is completed, The maximum height of that site is 30 meters, and we dropped that significantly from our last public meeting that we had, that the tenants were concerned about the height and the shadowing. Even with the height that was reduced down to 7 stories, the shadowing did not affect them. So now we're down to 4 stories plus a roof terrace. So the shadowing doesn't affect them. They're almost the same height because it is lower than the other side on Beachboro, so it does drop. And the second question was parking. We have an over park allotment to the site.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great.
Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. You said 4 stories, but I saw on the pictures you have to walk up to the first story, so it's more like 4.5 stories?
Correct.
Because yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not
So the
all of
people
them.
who- Yeah.
Some of them, it's the way the grading is kind of working. So
Okay.
when you get to the bottom, right at Mount Albert and I guess Beachboro for terms on that side, that's the lowest point in the whole site. And then as you start going back towards Beachboro and Judah-Dome, it rises. So those steps, instead of being 6 steps going up, it's probably 2 steps, maybe 3.
Okay. And is there, I had mentioned that when you were here last time, I was asking about accessibility to those units that are, it's such a long climb up just to the front door of some of those units. Has there been any change in that?
There has not, unfortunately. So there is accessibility for the ground floor units from Beachboro. They are accessible and ground level. So they will be able to come in at more or less ground level as they come in. However, the second floor units, unfortunately, it just wasn't feasibly adequate to put in elevators and to make them cost efficient. We really want to try to create a different diversification of units that are here, and having those units as I guess we could call it the lowest price entry point that we can hopefully make elevator costs, maintenance, and access, and going in that direction for those suites would just increase the costs and not make those suites, in my opinion, not as attainable to first-time home buyers or retirees, and making the price point logical.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's not second floor units. It's 3.5 stories up that you have to walk before you get into your living room, 4.5 stories to get to your bedroom.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Desforges. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Okay. Members of committee? Anything further? Councillor Johns?
Yeah, we've spoken about allocation, and I really would like to see us move forward with prioritizing allocation on this site. I would like to see the commercial allocation move forward. I know that there's been some wording that has been sketched out to kind of capture the idea of prioritizing. It doesn't mean that it's a green check mark. What it means is it's like a yellow check mark to give the opportunity in the process to move forward from the staff side, but knowing that we've given the opportunity to continue to explore, and that's what I would like to see on the allocation side. I've already moved what is here on committee from the resolutions, but I would like to continue to lean in on the opportunity of allocation.
Okay, so you mentioned that there was some wording. Was there something that you wanted to put on the table to add to your motion? We also had a request for, I noted there was a request for severance approval as well in the deputation. If we're gonna go whole hog, we might as well address all 3 of those matters: the commercial, the residential, and the severance.
If I could?
Yes, please.
So, and what I'm looking at is that as that council through staff, what we need to do is reaffirm that availability of the sewage allocation for the commercial portion of the development. And then I would like to continue on and say that council request staff to prioritize the residential portion of the site for the sewage allocation. I believe that this development delivers on the community priorities that we are looking for in the diversified housing stock, and I think it's the right one for delivering the commercial services. I don't know what other, obviously, I do not know what other thoughts are from other councillors, but would like to hear feedback on that draft motion.
Okay, Madam Clerk, did you capture that? Can you perhaps put it on the screen? Did you want to address the idea of the severance as well, Councillor Johns, or do you want to leave that for now?
Might as well go all in. I'm happy to, Madam Chair, I know that you are also very strong on this side. If you do feel strongly too in helping to word this, I'm happy to defer to your thoughts. I know it's kind of awkward with you sitting in the chair, but I would like to acknowledge that as a bit awkward, but I'd also acknowledge your strength in exploring that.
Sure. So what I will express is that, as I mentioned earlier, the history on this file is a reasonably long one. It's not the longest one, but it's reasonably long. And the first iteration was problematic for me politically and for my constituents. And this represents delivering on many of the, quite frankly, the services that residents have been literally begging us for in the community. So from my perspective, I think and I know Councillor Carruthers was a little concerned about the conveyance of land. I take that off the table altogether. I see that as a bonus. But for me, this doesn't require an official plan amendment. It doesn't require a zoning bylaw amendment. We've taken care of that piece. It delivers on the commercial services that our community is requesting. It adds to our housing stock in a diversified manner, which meets the intent of our allocation policy that's proposed. We haven't taken it over the finish line, but it meets that allocation, and that conveyance is a bonus. So for me, I think that this is a win for all parties, and I certainly would be happy to entertain reaffirming the availability of the commercial allocation, and certainly putting this into the queue for the residential side of things. I understand that things are under review at the moment. It sounds like we have 641 available at our hand, but I understand too that my colleagues are a little leery of that at this point, of simply signing that away without 100% certainty on that. But I would like to give standing to this application in the queue to say this meets what we're looking for, and when we have the residential allocation, I'd like to grant it to them. That's how I see it. It sounds like I'm aligned with you, Councillor Johns. Is that the case?
Holy and eloquent as usual.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, you've heard some of the discussion. I saw you typing away and cutting and pasting. Can you put something on the screen for us to discuss, please?
Through Madam Chair, just bear with me for a moment. I wasn't sure about a comment that was made around severance. I believe, was that a note around conveyance?
So I believe the applicant in his presentation said that he was seeking approval for the severance, which would allow for the conveyance of that corner to the town. Ms. Bégin, would that be what we would be looking for this afternoon?
Yes, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Bégin.
Through Madam Chair, I'm just going to try and capture what potentially is the intent. I'm not sure, but what I've done is highlight the last clause based off of Councillor John's document that was provided in terms of how the wording was presented.
Okay.
I'm not so sure about the language around how to address the severance to permit the conveyance.
Ms. Bégin, can you have a look at this that's on the screen to make sure that that council approve the severance application to permit the conveyance of land to the town?
Through you, Madam Chair, and I'll ask our manager planning to to provide comment, because typically severances are the purview of the Committee of Adjustment, so perhaps it would be approved in principle, and that would allow that mechanism to go forward.
Ms. Moore, can you help us iron this one out, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know that you don't need a consent to convey the land to the town. That can be done through the site plan agreement. What the consent is needed for is to separate the residential from the commercial. That would typically go to Committee of Adjustment. If this is something that council wants to support and want to make that endorsement that we can then share with the Committee of Adjustment, I think that might be the approach you want to take.
Okay. So it's not the conveyance of the corner of land to us, it's the severance of commercial from residential.
That's right.
Because one will be sold and one will be leased. Got it. Councillor Johns.
I was going to say, it sounds like it should be support in principle the severance versus approve in principle.
Yes.
And that would be my comment on that.
That's correct, yeah, the severance application. Will that cover off what we need, Ms. Moore? Ms. Bégin?
Just to clarify, the availability of the allocation for the commercial portion is confirmed. That is maintained in a separate register through our colleagues in engineering and public works. So I guess the question is the residential portion of the allocation.
So we can just reaffirm the availability at this point. We don't have to do it through staff anymore, because you've just done it. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Johns, I saw you move your mic towards your mouth. Are you good? Okay, Councillor Carruthers. I think we have what we need here, so discussion on the motion, I think, is where we're going right now. So Councillor Carruthers, you want to start things off? Go ahead.
Yeah. So second paragraph, that council endorsed the site plan application in principle. Can we separate that from the rest of that paragraph? Because I don't think they're dependent on each other. I'm happy to support this in principle. I need some more information on why we would delegate final approval. It sounds like there's a lot of questions here, and I would love that to see that come back to council for final approval.
Ms. Bégin, isn't that just the standard language that we use when we approve a site plan?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. This would be because we're at the stage where the majority of the technical review has taken place, and we're reasonably ready to move forward, understanding that whatever further changes are being undertaken.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, what Ms. Bégin just said about the ICI portion of the development having service allocation, I thought in our draft allocation, we had something set aside for that. So I'm just a little confused that we now have a separate fund for ICI, separate allocation reserve for ICI.
Go ahead, Ms. Bégin.
Through you, Madam Chair, there has always been a portion set aside for commercial or ICI applications. There's a maximum flow that the region will permit, and so working with our colleagues in engineering and public works, they have earmarked the developments in progress that they anticipate, and that includes institutional uses such as the HELP and future schools, that type of thing. And what the new policy is looking for, and why the decision was to set some of that aside for commercial and ICI use, is that what we had sort of available to us for ICI development is now maxed out. We've reached the 1,240 is it liters per second capacity with what's already in the queue. And so for any additional ICI to come forward, we would need to tap into what was previously recognized as the residential municipal reserve.
So in other words, we knew this was coming because we've been dealing with this file since 2017.
That's correct.
So this has already been accounted for in the ICI reserve,
The commercial portion,
The-
yes, that's true.
the commercial portion. Okay. Okay, but anything else, like what else is in the works that's also been allocated to that? Because I mean, there's a number of things that have come forward in Hall Landing that they're looking at. Are those part of that reserve, or I just find this odd that some of these things that we haven't approved yet have already been set aside in the reserve, but only the commercial part of it, not the residential part of it. So I just want to get a better handle on what has already been accounted for in that reserve. What other things have we not approved that have been set aside in that reserve, or is this the only one?
No, through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the exhausted list. I don't know if my colleague, Mr. Molinari, can speak to that, but I do know that the HALP is one of them. The new school that's anticipated to come online is another. It was at the staff discretion to be able to approve these commercial uses. So that's why they were earmarked and part of that maximum flow list. But perhaps Mr. Molinari can give some more examples of the projects that are on that list.
Would you like to? Sure. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. I don't have the list right in front of me, but General Manager Beijing has spoken correctly on this matter. There are a number, and I believe we brought it to Council's attention at one of our previous growth management presentations. So there's a list that goes back in time to there's probably a couple dozen locations, and really it's all the ICI stuff that is in the queue that Council's heard about and that the town's been working on. So there's nothing in that list that's a surprise. It's all stuff that has been previously communicated to Council. But we can certainly, dig that up and provide that to Council if you wish.
If it's stuff that's already been communicated to us, that's fine. And what about the high school? Is that part on the list?
Through you, Madam Chair, the high school's not on that list right now. The high school is likely many years away. We will have allocation through the Lower York expansion program by the time that that high school would be in place to accommodate that. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I know that the board is working on moving up the date on that. I just don't want us to get caught without allocation for high school. That's all.
Ms. Beijing, go ahead.
Thank you.
I don't want to get off topic, but as requested, we did follow up and have meetings with the planning team at the school board to better understand their timelines. And and it is right now 10 years plus is the timeline that they've given us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. This is moved by Councillor Johns. All those in favor? Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our prepared agenda. Is there anything further that members of committee would like to bring forward at this time? Seeing none. Ms. Beijing, did you have anything that you'd like to raise?
Nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn the chair back to you, Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Councillor Roy-DiClemente. I will now take the gavel and pass it virtually to Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a couple of items on our agenda today. The first one is the Community Parks and Recreation Culture Report, Bradford Bypass Active Transportation and Trail Update. Mr. Karmazin, would you like to give us a quick update on that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Town staff have been actively involved with the Ontario Ministry of Transportation as a part of the Bradford Bypass Project Working Group. Our work with the project has included coordination of our active transportation and trails corridors that are integrated with the bypass project. Town staff have provided the MTO with our active transportation and trails master planning work and the desired future trail alignments
And staff have also made a formal request for an east-west multi-use trail connection between the communities of East Gwillimbury and Bradford. At this time, the province has indicated that an east-west connection is not included with the design, the environmental assessment, land procurement, or construction of the bypass project. However, staff are seeking council support to engage the province in discussion to support active transportation and trails projects in town that may integrate with the bypass project, namely and in particular the lake-to-lake trail system. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have related to the update and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Karmazin. Could I have a mover for this report, please? Moved by Councillor Carruthers. Are there any questions? Councillor Roy-DiClemente and then Councillor Carruthers. Actually, allow Councillor Carruthers to go first.
Go for it.
Sorry, that's good procedure. Way you go. Councillor
Thank you.
Carruthers.
I just wanted to add to the motion that council engage with the Provincial Minister of Transportation and our local MPP. I think it's important since MPP Mulrooney was part of the announcement for these trails that we also engage with her. And since she was the Minister of Transportation too, getting her on board as our local representative prior to going to the Ministry of Transportation, I think may be wise.
Great suggestion, Madam Clerk, if you could amend that. Councillor Roy-DiClemente, over to you now.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Karmazin, do we have a sense of what the province is doing in Bradford, West Gwillimbury? Because there was an announcement, there was a photo op, there was I believe there was a marching band. And for them to suggest to us that they're not doing anything on this side of the highway seems a bit odd. So do we have a sense of what they're doing there?
Mr. Karmazin?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, they have supported a locally based trail connection that, again, integrates with the bypass as far as an overpass. It would be a locally identified trail connection within their master planning framework. And a similar opportunity presents itself to the town of East Gwillimbury with the proposed recommendation.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? For myself, I must confess, I am somewhat disappointed because, you know, when this was brought to us, this part and parcel, you know, we know the Bradford bypass was not, you know, not everyone was excited about it, and the trail was seen as a nice way of, putting a little sugar to make the medicine go down. So I am disappointed to hear this. I think we need to keep trying to engage the province and have good conversations as well. I think we need to let Georgina, our friends in Georgina, know about this because they're, you know, having a trail linking Bradford into this side of the lake is good economic development for Georgina as well. So I think they could be an advocate for us. But I'll leave that with you, Mr. Karmazin. If there's no other questions, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, none opposed. Motion is carried. Second item on our agenda, we have Community Parks, Recreation, Culture Memo, Public Open House notice for the draft tree protection bylaw. Mr. Karmazin, could you quickly take us through that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, staff have prepared a memorandum informing council of the public open house opportunities within each community to provide input into the draft tree protection bylaw. Staff will make best efforts to communicate these open house opportunities with corporate communications to ensure the public is well informed. Be happy to answer any questions related to the memo.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Karmazin. Could I have a mover for this, please? Moved by Councillor Roy-DiClemente. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Mr. Carmison, do you have any other issues you'd like to bring before committee at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no further updates at this time. Thank you.
Okay, and anyone from committee have any questions for Mr. Carmison? Seeing none, I will thank you very much, Mr. Carmison, and pass the chair back to you, Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Councillor Crone. We're going to go now to Councillor Foster in the chair for Emergency and Community Safety Services.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. So today we have an emergency services report regarding social services agreement with the Region of York, which pertains to our emergency plan. Can I have a mover for this report? Mr. Johns. So we're moved by Councillor Johns, and we will go to Chief Mackenzie at this point to walk us through the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report is fairly straightforward and deals with the updating of an existing agreement that East Gwillimbury has with the Region of York for the provisions of emergency social services in the event of a large-scale emergency or disaster. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from members of committee? I'm not seeing any. I will just add that everything that's in this report is things that everyone who's ever had their hands on writing an emergency plan has been concerned about. So this does nothing but strengthen our emergency plan. So I think we can move ahead with a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous and carried. Anything else, Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to add.
Okay, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Johns.
Thank you, Councillor Foster, and to Councillor Leahy for Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services.
Thank you very much. Through you, Acting Mayor Johns. So the first item is the joint, the assumption of the West Sharon Holdings Incorporated Phase 1 Sharon Village Development Subdivision. And do I have a mover for this, please? Thank you, Councillor Foster. And the report is moved by Councillor Foster. General Manager Molinari, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a standard assumption report. Construction started in roughly 2014. It's a 199-lot subdivision. The 13-month maintenance period is complete, and all the works are ready for assumption except for some very minor works that we've retained some funds for. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, General Manager Molinari. Are there any questions from members of committee? Seeing no questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Thank you very much. The motion is carried unanimously, and so that's it. We have a short agenda for this department today. And are there any other questions from members of committee for our General Manager Molinari? Seeing none, I will pass the chair back to Councillor Johns.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to finance, and this is a small agenda here as well today. It looks like a housekeeping item. So we're looking for a mover for us to table the adjustment of some certain property taxes, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Marshall to speak to it. Can I have a mover for this? Councillor Roy-DiClemente, thank you. And Mr. Marshall, take it away.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This is a memo that we provide annually with respect to adjustments to assessments and, as a result, taxes paid on certain properties that filed for an exemption under Section 357 of the Municipal Act. The town has basically no say in this. It's between the landowner and MPAC for making adjustments, and we facilitate the process. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from committee? Seeing none, we've had a mover. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried. Any other questions from committee to Mr. Marshall? Mr. Marshall, do you have anything further?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing at this time.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm just looking ahead on this agenda here. There's items L through O. It doesn't appear that we have any business on items L through O, but that takes us to adjournment. So looking for a mover for adjournment. Councillor Foster, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thanks, everyone. Do we, Madam Clerk, do we want to take a quick break before we go into special council, or do we want to, yes, we do. So what time for special council, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's really up to the committee's preferences, perhaps a 10-minute break to kind of get us through.
Great, so we'll reconvene here at 3:50 for convening the special council. Thanks, everyone.
And for the